The sky over Hrímvik was streaked with indigo clouds as Eydis leaned against the splintered prow of the last surviving ship, feeling the weight of ash in her palm. She watched the river Ildra, ice-swollen from winter's end, carry away glimmers of burnt timber and the flakes of dead leaves. By her side, an old hound named Skorn pressed his nose to the ground, searching for what could not be found. All her world had been lost in a night that burned too bright. Her parents, the Laughing Clan, the home filled with songs and stories carved in the rafters. She wore now only a weather-bleached rune circle around her wrist, sealed with red wax, its pattern unique to her bloodline. The spiral of the hair, the mark of renewal and sorrow. Hrímvik had always lived in the shadow of the ancient mountain halder, crowned with stone circles and shrouded in legend. It was said that those who lost everything would hear whispers in the ash, guiding them west to the springs where gods sometimes wept and the dead murmured secrets. Eydis did not want these whispers. She wanted to remain, to vanish into the bones of her home. Yet the old hound and the mounting silence pressed her forward. Early spring brought with it two others, Audun, whose fierce gaze spoke of frost-bitten secrets, and Sigrun, a healer whose herbs coaxed breath from the stiffest wounds. Both bore the marks of deep loss. Audun had buried every friend in the war against the southern raiders. Sigrun had watched illness take two children and the song in her heart. They joined Eydis at the smoke-black circle near the water's edge, a place meant for prayers, now heavy with the residue of grief. Audun spoke first. In the north there is a place of standing stones, wreathed in mist. Legends say the gods speak there to the bold. Will you come with us, Eydis? Each hesitated, weighed by the gravity of new beginnings amid ruin. They spent the night beneath torn sailcloth, Eydis perched above the others, clutching the rune and searching the wind for her mother's voice. When dawn broke, Skorn barked at the embers and led all three westward, his tail guiding them into the forests rumored to be haunted by the half-seen, the wild spirits who guard the gates between worlds and test the hearts of the grieving. For 7 days, they walked under ancient firs, sometimes feasting on mushrooms and wild eggs, sometimes hiding from the scream of ravens. Sigrun found old markings on stones, the spiral, the horse, a single drop carved like a tear. Audun relayed stories from his father, who had seen Wrd herself riding her fate hound through the northern fog, her hair sparkling with the sorrow of centuries. Eydis rarely spoke, but every night she listened to the others recount the names of the lost, the voices half-remembered, the regrets that grew larger in the darkness and faded with the morning sun. On the 8th day, they reached the border of the world, an open meadow shrouded with mist, studded with megaliths etched in runes that had not been read in hundreds of winters. At its center, a single black spring bubbled. Skorn lay down beside it, his old eyes reflecting the shifting sky. As they approached, the mist thickened, and figures began to form. 3 spirits, one for each companion, woven from memory and longing. Eydis' spirit showed her younger self, unbroken and unafraid. Sigrun's appeared as a child, hand outstretched, waiting for the cure that never came. Audun stood tall and stern, bearing a shield chipped by loss. "We come with grief," Eydis whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "We walk the path of the sorrowing. What must we do to enter the gods' presence?" The spirits answered in unison, in a voice as old as frost. "Surrender what no longer breathes. Honor your bitterness. Shape your heart's shadow into light." Sigrun placed her hands in the water, letting the cold numb her anguish. Audun cut a lock of hair, casting it onto the surface, watching it sink beneath the bubbling black. Eydis removed the rune circle from her wrist, pouring a tear onto the wax before lowering it onto the stone. Skorn placed his paw beside them, a silent gesture. The ground trembled, and the mist parted for a moment. In its center, the ancient goddess Vedra appeared, her antler crown sparkling with dew, her eyes, one pale with loss, one dark with fury. She spoke not in words, but in vision, showing Eydis a tapestry of what could be. Courage hammered from heartbreak, a hall rebuilt from ash, songs restored through memory's ordeal. Then, as quickly as she came, Vedra vanished. The meadow stilled. Sigrun and Audun slept by the sacred water, Skorn watched the sky, and Eydis dreamed for the first time not of what was lost, but what could yet be won? The waking was slow, limbed and gray, and the fine haze that crept through each wound. Eydis rose with the first light, her fingers sticky with dried tears, the cold memory of the vision pressing against her chest. She gazed at her wrist, where the rune circle had been. Now only a pale ghost imprint marked her skin. Audun and Sigrun still slept, curled close to Skorn for warmth as the air thickened and the world grew new. The meadow and its stones held a silence richer than any they'd known before. At the heart, the spring swirled black and silver, flecked with sparks of dawn. Eydis dipped her hand into the bitter waters. Images flickered against the surface, flames licking at rafters, shrieks swallowed by storm, her father's final benediction, her mother's song twisting like smoke through memory's halls. She inhaled, felt the ache settle into resolve. Loss had stripped her, but she sensed now, perhaps for the first time, that something remained. Something she could shape, neither alive nor dead, but burning with the need to endure. Audun stirred, his frost-blown hair tangled with stray needles. "We dreamed last night," he murmured, voice rough, but not of the lost. "We dreamed of Vadra's antlers, of a hall filled with voices, not the dead but those yet to come." Sigrun rubbed her eyes, her fingers pausing on a pouch at her belt. She opened it, revealing 3 tiny glass vials, each filled with a breath of color, blue for sorrow, green for hope, red for memory. "My daughters gave me these," she said, her smile broken but proud. "I could not save them, but I carry their wishes. Today I choose to carry hope." Skorn barked softly, urging them onward. The companions stood, gathering what little remained: Audun's blade, Sigrun's vials, Eydis' empty wrist, and followed the old hound into the shadowed border where the trees gave way to the wild. The forest was older here, branches thick as arms, moss grown over stones marked with the symbols of forgotten clans. As they walked, they sensed the half-seen moving between trunks, a flicker of antlers, a slant of eyes in the gloom. The air thickened with longing. At midday, they found a clearing circled with rings of white bone. Skorn yipped, a challenge and a warning. The bones belonged to beasts, yes, but their arrangement spoke not of violence, but of something ceremonial, a gathering for spell or song. Eydis knelt among the bones. She recited the names of her kin, letting grief coil through her words. Sigrun scattered a pinch of blue powder, its color rising like mist and shaping the air in soft spirals. Audun, ever wary, drew his blade and laid it flat between the bones, a symbol of surrender to fate. The half-seen emerged, their forms wavering like torchlight on river ice. One stepped forward, a woman with hair flowing into feathers and eyes rimmed by molten gold. She carried a staff of twisted yew and wore at her neck a shard of clear amber. "We know you," she said without mouth or voice. "You carry wounds deeper than the river, but pain alone is powerless. You must offer more, if you seek the gate of the gods. What will you give?" Audun stood first. "I offer my honor," he said. "Let it be tested in battle, if need be. Let my strength serve not vengeance, but renewal." Sigrun produced a vial of green and poured it on the earth. "I offer my hope, thin and battered though it is. Let it sow new life." Eydis looked into her own shadow, then raised her hands. "I offer memory, but not just of loss, of laughter, of kindness, even of fear. I offer the full weight of my life." The half-seen nodded, one, then another, until the entire company bowed before them. The feather-haired woman touched Eydis' brow with the amber, whispering, "As you remember, so shall you remake the world. You 3 will pass. The next trial begins when sun meets moon." The companions continued, spirits lighter in the strange hush. They followed the forest until stars scattered the sky, Skorn's eyes ever watching for movement. Around midnight, a horn sounded, a low, mournful note that shivered every bone. They found themselves at the edge of a great ravine, split deep into the earth like a wound. Pale grasses brushed Eydis' ankles, and a cold mist roiled below. Here the legends spoke of Jartan, the spirit who kept the gate between the lost and those who dared to redeem them. Jartan appeared amid the fog, a translucent stag crowned with ice-dappled briars, one eye blind and the other bright as winter. "Who seeks entry?" Jartan's voice rang out, A whisper and a roar all at once. Eydis spoke, her words steady. "We seek the gods, not for vengeance but for meaning, for renewal." Sigrun added, "We seek to learn how loss can become seed." Audun, his blade sheathed, said simply, "We wish to serve." Jartan lowered his head. "Sorrow shapes the land. Each step forward demands truth. No deception, no shield. Name your greatest regret and pass." Audun began, voice steady but solemn. "I regret every mercy withheld, every kindness I neglected in pride." Sigrun bowed her head. "I regret my despair, the moments I stopped believing life would heal." Eydis touched her heart. "I regret letting fear drive me to silence when I should have sung for the dying." The ravine shimmered, the mist parted, and a bridge of woven dreams stretched across. The companion stepped onto it, Skorn trailing behind, his gaze fixed on the horizon where a faint glow promised something kinder. That night, starfire guided their way, and Eydis felt, deep within, that even in loss, something precious could be found. The bridge carried them to the far side, and there, beneath silver-leaved trees, they were welcomed by Vaydra herself, flanked by a circle of gods whose eyes shone with the ache and promise of forgotten futures. She spoke, "You have begun the pilgrimage of renewal. Now you must face the fourfold trial, to lose, to grieve, to forgive, and, at last, to love. Only then will your world change. Only then will Hrímvik rise anew." The companions knelt, exhausted but hopeful, as the goddess beckoned them forward, deeper into the heart of myth, toward the trials that would demand everything and return only what was truly essential. Vaydra led them deeper into a realm where seasons changed with every footstep. One moment they walked through autumn leaves that whispered secrets in forgotten tongues, the next through fields of spring flowers that bloomed and withered in heartbeats. The goddess moved with the fluid grace of water over stone, her antler crown catching fragments of light that seemed to come from no earthly sun. "The first trial awaits," she said, her voice resonating through bone and marrow. "To lose completely, you must first understand what you truly carry." They came to a grove where 4 trees stood in perfect alignment: oak for strength, ash for sacrifice, birch for new beginnings, and yew for the passage between worlds. At the center lay a pool so still it might have been black glass, reflecting not their faces but their souls laid bare. Eydis approached first, drawn by a compulsion deeper than curiosity. As she gazed into the depths, the water swirled, showing her not the burning of Hrímvik, but the moment 3 summers passed when her younger brother Kale had begged her to teach him the old songs. She had been too busy, too proud of her own learning to spare time for a child's fumbling attempts at melody. Now she watched him die in the flames, his voice calling not for their mother or father, but for the songs he had never learned. The water rippled, and Eydis saw more. Every harsh word she had spoken to her mother about the old ways being foolish, every time she had rolled her eyes when her father shared the clan histories, every moment she had chosen her own desires over the needs of her kin. The pool showed her that her greatest loss was not what the flames had taken, but what her own pride had already destroyed. Tears fell from her cheeks into the dark water, and where they landed, silver flowers bloomed beneath the surface. Audun stepped forward next. In the pool's depths, he witnessed not his fallen comrades in battle, but the nights before the final raid when he had sat apart from them, nursing his wounds and his bitterness. He saw himself refusing their offers of friendship, their invitations to share stories and songs around the fire. He had been so consumed with proving his worth as a warrior that he had forgotten to be worthy as a friend. When death came for them, they died as strangers to him, and he as a stranger to them. His hand tightened on his sword's hilt, then slowly relaxed. A single tear followed Eydis's into the pool, and another silver flower joined the first. Sigrun was the last to look. The water showed her the night her daughters had fallen ill with the wasting fever. She had possessed the herbs that might have helped, but she had been saving them for the winter stores, fearing shortages in the dark months ahead. While she hoarded her healing gifts, her children slipped away, and she had never forgiven herself for choosing prudence over love. Her tears came in a torrent, and the pool bloomed with silver light as a garden of flowers spread across its surface. "Now you understand the first trial," Vaydra said gently. "To lose is not merely to be bereaved by fate. but to recognize what we ourselves have already sacrificed to fear, pride, and doubt. Only when you name these losses can you be free to grieve them truly. Skorn padded to the pool's edge and drank deeply. When he raised his head, his old eyes gleamed with renewed life, as if the water had given him back some portion of his youth. The goddess gestured toward a path that led up a steep hillside. The second trial awaits, the Hall of Echoes, where you must grieve not only your own losses, but the sorrows of all who came before. The climb was treacherous, rocky slopes that shifted underfoot and winds that carried voices from ages past. As they ascended, the companions began to hear them, the lamentations of warriors who had died far from home, mothers who had buried children, lovers separated by death and duty. The voices grew stronger with each step until they seemed to pour from the stones themselves. At the summit stood a hall built from bones, not of humans, but of great beasts from the world's youth. Whales and mammoths, dragons and giants, all had given their remains to create walls that hummed with ancient sorrows. The roof was thatched with hair from 1,000 mourners, and the doors were carved with every tear that had ever fallen. Inside, the hall stretched endlessly in all directions. Seated on benches of polished stone were the forms of all who had ever grieved. Translucent figures from every age and nation, their faces turned toward a great hearth where flames burned without wood or ember. "Sit," Vedra commanded. "Listen, weep. Let their sorrows flow through you until you understand that grief is not a burden to bear alone, but a river that connects all hearts." They took their places among the endless congregation. Eydis found herself beside a woman whose child had been taken by wolves, Audun next to a warrior whose entire village had been consumed by plague, Sigrun between two mothers who had lost their sons to the same war. As they sat, the stories began to flow, not in words, but directly into their hearts. Eydis felt the weight of 1,000 bereavements, each as sharp and real as her own. She wept for children she had never known, for loves she had never shared, for homes she had never seen. The tears seemed endless, but with each one, she felt her own grief becoming lighter, not because it mattered less, but because it was shared among the multitude. Audun's warrior's heart, long hardened against emotion, cracked open like ice in spring. He grieved for every enemy he had slain, understanding now that each death had left someone in this hall of sorrows. His tears mixed with those of mothers and wives, fathers and brothers, until vengeance became meaningless and only compassion remained. Sigrun wept until she thought she might dissolve entirely, her healer's heart expanding to hold the pain of ages. But as she cried, she began to understand that grief was not just loss. It was love persisting beyond death, hope enduring beyond despair, the proof that what mattered most could never truly die. They wept until dawn broke through the bone walls, and when the light touched their faces, they found their tears had become pearls, not of value, but of memory, each one containing a story of love that had outlasted loss. "The second trial is complete," Vedra announced. "You have learned that to grieve is to join the great fellowship of the heart-wounded, and in that joining, to find that no sorrow stands alone." As they rose to leave the hall, each of the ghostly mourners smiled and raised a hand in blessing. Their individual sorrows remained, but they were no longer imprisoned by them. Grief had become a bridge rather than a chasm. Outside, the sun shone with unusual warmth, and flowers grew where their tears had fallen during the climb. Skorn bounded ahead, his step lighter, leading them toward whatever trial awaited. "Two more remain," Vedra said as they began their descent. "The third trial will test your ability to forgive, not only others, but yourselves. And the fourth—" She paused, her antlered crown catching the light. "The fourth will ask you to love again, knowing that all love ends in loss." Eydis looked at her companions, Audun no longer stern and distant, Sigrun no longer broken by despair, and felt something she had thought forever lost beginning to stir in her chest. It was small still, fragile as a newborn flame, but it was unmistakably hope. The path led downward now, toward a valley shrouded in silver mist, where their next trial awaited. But for the first time since the burning of Hrímvik, Eydis walked forward not just to escape the past, but to discover what the future might hold. The valley welcomed them with shifting light, as if dawn and dusk overlapped, and colored the air in peach, plum, and silver. Vedra moved before them, her steps silent on the moss and fallen leaves. The mist held an unusual stillness, and Eydis felt it wrap around her like the gentle touch of a mother she barely recalled. The third trial begins here, where forgiveness is both the gate and the path, Vedra whispered. All who seek healing must unweave the knots of regret, jealousy, and vengeance in their hearts, those tied not only to outsiders, but to themselves. Past a ring of runestones, the mist thickened, hiding every landmark. Audun reached for his blade. Sigrun gripped her healing vials. Eydis lifted a single pearl formed in the Hall of Echoes, its surface iridescent like new hope. Skorn lingered beside her, for prickling in the strange air. They walked blind, voices echoing oddly as if carried by spirits in the haze. Suddenly, shapes coalesced, shadow selves, formed of memory and guilt, each a reflection of choices unmade and words unsaid. Audun's specter bore the face of a boy he had once mocked for cowardice. Sigrun's were the sorrowful features of her dead husband, whose illness she had been unable to heal. Eydis saw her own shadow, shifting between her mother, father, and brother, all accusing her in silence. You must face them head-on, Vedra intoned. Speak aloud the forgiveness you have withheld. Until you do, the mist will not fade, and you cannot pass through. Audun drew a trembling breath. Eric, he addressed his old comrade's shadow. I blamed you for fear when you only wanted peace. I forgive myself for measuring strength only with the sword, and I forgive you for surviving as you could. The shade dissolved, wind rattling the runestones in gentle applause. Sigrun knelt before her husband's sorrow. I forgive you for leaving. I forgive myself for hiding my grief and duty. I wish I had said goodbye with tenderness, not bitterness. May my healing go not just to others, but to my own broken spirit. Her husband's shadow wiped a spectral tear, and the mist around her lightened, sweet with the scent of birthwort. Eydis's shadows multiplied, her family appearing as she remembered them in fragments, sometimes angry, sometimes laughing, always distant. She felt the weight of her mistakes, her pride, her silence. Mother, she said first, I forgive you for being too weary to sing. I forgive myself for refusing to learn until it was too late. To her father, I forgive you for hiding your grief. I forgive myself for not comforting you. To Kale, I forgive you for being only a child. I forgive myself for being frightened of loving you. One by one, with every spoken forgiveness, the shadows changed, softened, smiled, then melted into the mist. When the last had faded, a hush fell over the valley. The fog lifted as though a veil had been pulled back. Then, across the open air, the three saw a great tree blooming in impossible colors: crimson, gold, indigo, its branches trembling with an unearthly music. Vedra gestured toward it. The tree is your heart's memory, renewed by forgiveness. But before new songs can grow, you must complete the last trial. Under the tree's canopy, a stone altar waited. On it sat 3 vessels, shaped from bone, glass, and wood. Vedra explained, you must fill each vessel with love, not sentimental or easy, but love born from the acceptance of loss. Only then will each of you be free to carry sorrow and hope together. Audun approached first, placing his sword beside the bone vessel. I offer the love I felt for kin and friend, which I have denied, yet which survives in the memory of their courage and laughter. The vessel filled with blue flame, flickering but sure. Sigrun poured a few healing drops into the wooden cup. The love I have for my daughters never died, even as I did nothing more to save them. The world will see their memory blossom with every life I heal. Her vessel glowed green, sprouting tiny buds. Eydis placed her Hall of Echoes pearl into the glass. The love I lost through pride now returns, unguarded. I will teach the songs to any child who asks, and let every memory serve as a kindling for hope. Her vessel shimmered gold and scattered light throughout the roots of the tree. The air thickened with a warm radiance, the bark and branches pulsing in harmony. Vedra touched each vessel, lifting it to her lips and breathing in their offering. May your love carry you always, even after death. This is the final lesson of sorrow. Love, renewed by loss, is eternal, and it is the heart of myth and memory. The companions felt a new strength suffuse them, Hearts lighter, burdens understood but not erased. Hope rekindled even as the truth of all endings lingered. The mist parted in full. The valley lay before them, green, rolling, and alive. The ruins of Hrímvik glistened on the horizon, where shoots had begun to push through blackened earth, and distant voices called in greeting. Skorn bounded forward, leading the healers, the warrior, and the song-bearer home. Vedra watched from beneath the tree. She sang for them, not a song of simple joy, but a tune braided of grief and forgiveness. As her voice faded into the dawn, the companions realized their pilgrimage had changed the land, and their sorrow was now the bedrock of Hrímvik's rebirth. They entered the green world as new people, Eydis with memory and wisdom, Sigrun with limitless compassion, Audun with strength softened by tenderness, Skorn as the link between the living and the mythic. The final challenge awaited, but for this moment, they stood as a family forged not by blood, nor by mere survival, but by the deep, enduring alchemy of love wrought from loss. The reborn Hrímvik greeted the travelers as if the land itself remembered. Charred timbers were replaced by quick-growing saplings, ruins softened to moss and spring grass. Villagers returned in trickling bands, widows, warriors, children tugging battered toys. With each step through the valley, Eydis, Audun, and Sigrun felt history radiate through them, the trials, the sorrow, and the new well of acceptance within. Though the air was bright, the changes were not without pain. Voices of the lost persisted. Kales sang in the wind, Sigrun's daughters giggled faintly where wildflowers grew, and Audun's friends returned at dusk in memory's shadows. Skorn, older but now unbowed, led the children to safety as they rediscovered home among stumps and stone. As the seasons spun, the companions began the work foreseen in Vedra's vision. Eydis wandered from house to house, guiding hands to carve runes and rebuild rafters. Her voice, once shrouded in pride, now became the vessel for old songs and new. She gathered young and old alike, teaching the music Kale longed to learn, now sung by every mouth and echoing across the water. Sigrun dedicated herself to healing, yet not only of body. She wove wreaths from herbs and tears, visiting the grief-stricken with quiet stories and gentle hands. Though her daughters had gone, each life she saved became the seed of something beautiful, and the healing vials she had treasured filled anew with every kindness granted. Audun took charge of the warriors, but insisted they learn more than blade and shield. In a glade circled by new stones, he taught the old tales of love, forgiveness, and sacrifice. No act of courage was celebrated unless it bore humility. The clan honored mercy as it once honored victory, and the youngest asked as much about friendship as about battle. But for all their gifts, each knew the past could not be erased. On the eve of the first harvest, Eydis stood alone at the spring, wrestling with an ache that would not fade. As she sang for them, Audun placed his sword upon the earth, palms bare. Let every lesson of mercy endure beyond my own strength. Vedra produced 3 seeds, luminous and strange, 1 blue, 1 gold, 1 silver. Plant these in the hollow where sorrow began. There a tree will rise taller than all others, fed by tears and light. Its fruit will restore memory to the grieving and courage to those who despair. Together, under the goddess's gaze, the trio planted the seeds at the center of Hrímvik, weaving runes and song into the soil. Days passed as they cared for the young tree, watering, singing, dreaming with hope and ache. When the first fruit ripened, it glowed like the moon at solstice. A mother with deep scars tasted the blue fruit and remembered her lost son with simple peace. A warrior, afraid after fleeing battle, ate the gold and found the strength to forgive himself. A child, orphaned and sleeping by the spring, ate the silver and began to dream of a family, not remembered, not lost, but discovered in kindness. The tree flourished, and so did Hrímvik. Rituals grew around its trunk, the festival of forgiveness, the song circle of nights, the planting of memory stones. Grief became story, story became tradition, tradition became the soul of the clan. Skorn grew ancient, his muzzle white and eyes clouding, but he remained as the silent watcher, a living bridge between the old and the new. One night, When stars blazed above the valley and the tree glowed even after sunset, Vedra twisted through the dream world, laying a gentle hand on each of their hearts. "The final challenge approaches," she murmured. "You must carry the lessons outward, beyond this valley. Sorrow is everywhere, and only living myth can teach the world to endure." Eydis, Sigrun, Audun, and Skorn understood. Legacy rooted in Hrímvik was only the beginning. The saga's true test was how far the spirit of renewal could travel, reshaping villages, families, even gods. The next morning, before the assembled clan, Eydis raised her voice. "We are not healed by forgetting, nor by living for ourselves. We are healed by what we share, by what we forgive, by what we love despite all endings. We must carry our light, even into the places most shadowed." As the hall echoed with song, the three companions prepared for a final journey, a pilgrimage across the north, to plant seeds where sorrow had made true silence. Their road stretched into the unknown, mountains drenched in legend, coastlines haunted by the half-seen, marshes where loss outnumbered hope. With every step, a piece of Hrímvik and a piece of themselves bloomed behind them. Their farewells were quiet but poignant. Eydis, Sigrun, Audun, and Skorn pressed palms and foreheads to the sacred tree as Hrímvik gathered to honor the trio's courage. The night before their departure, old songs wove through the valley, threads of longing wound with new hope. Many wept, not for the parting alone, but for the knowledge that healing must move forward, even away from home. The next dawn, a brisk wind swept the fields, and the four set out on the old road, bearing with them the fruits of the sacred tree, blue, gold, and silver, cradled in woven cloth and covered in runes of legacy. Their first steps took them north, toward mountains spoken about only in tales, the realm of Vandra, haunted and wild. For days, they passed wind-blasted moors and storm-split ridges. Skorn snuffled each new scent, finding paths marked by ancient travelers. Sigrun traded healing for passage through villages suffering famine, teaching the festival of forgiveness wherever she paused. Audun spoke to young warriors, sharing stories of mercy and strength learned from loss. Eydis sang in every hall, teaching the music that turned mourning into kinship. Yet, not all welcomed them. In Tarmjorn, hatred lingered from an old feud with Hrímvik. The villagers spat at their feet and barred their doors. "Why do you come?" challenged a woman with arms folded across a battered tunic. "The gods deserted us. What good is your memory and song?" Eydis knelt, offering a silver fruit and the tale of Kale's lost music. Sigrun bound a wound and spoke softly of her daughters. Audun sat on cold stones and recited the names of friends who died far from kin. The woman listened, cautiously, then with tears. By dusk, she joined the song circle, and that night a new tradition grew among the villagers. As the seasons turned, their journey grew harder. Audun fell ill beside a frozen lake, racked with fever and old injuries. Sigrun spent 3 nights tending him, sleepless and whispering old prayers. Eydis stood watch, her voice quiet, Skorn pressed close. In the morning, Audun awoke, not cured but steadied, the taste of hope lingering in every breath. "We carry each other," he said, "even when the strength is not all our own." Beyond the lake of broken fire, the landscape shifted, jagged cliffs where the half-seen ran wild, their shapes flickering between animal, dream, and memory. The travelers set stones in a new ring, offering the fruits and songs of Hrímvik. One night, as Sigrun poured balm on a stranger's wound, a half-seen woman approached, her antlers glittering with frost. "What is this healing, born of pain?" she asked. "It is the root of our tree, grown from sorrow. We have learned to forgive and to love amid endings," Sigrun replied. The half-seen bowed, and the wind scattered seeds from the sacred tree across the cliffs. Fawn, ravines, and old paths sprouted new buds, the colors unfamiliar but the promise true. Eydis sang the anthem of forgiveness through the valley. Audun shared stories of mercy with bards who had lost their own families. Sigrun rested at the sacred springs to teach the children how memory could be a blessing rather than a curse. Their legends spread, and soon, wherever they paused, new circles bloomed, places for forgiveness, for songs, for the planting of sorrow's gift. But each victory brought homesickness. Eydis dreamed every night of Hrímvik's hearth, of Kale's voice echoing. Audun yearned for the weight of a friend's hand on his shoulder. Sigrun saw her daughters laughing in the faces of the children she saved. Only Skorn, wise and ghost-like, seemed truly at peace. On their final night in Vandra, the goddess Vedra appeared again, rising in mist and moonlight at the edge of an ancient stone circle. You have carried the lessons far, and these lands begin to heal. The final trial awaits. You must accept that not all loss will end in renewal, not all sorrow will be reversed. There will always be places undone by tragedy, hearts too wounded to sing. Eydis nodded through tears. Audun, silent, touched his scars. Sigrun gripped her vials, trembling but bold. Skorn lay quietly, his breathing slow, as if preparing for a journey only dogs can take. Vedra laid a gentle hand upon each. To finish your saga, you must return home, and let memory itself become part of the world beyond. The next day, they turned south, hearts aching but full, the final steps taking them to Hrímvik, where loss and love would meet once more, and the story would find its true ending. Across the winding passes, Eydis, Audun, Sigrun, and faithful Skorn strode toward Hrímvik, the valley's distant green now blurred by tears brought on by memory, exhaustion, and the certainty of endings. The roads they traced were marked by circles of stone, bright shoots from the travelers' gifts and new traditions, testament to how deeply the power of forgiveness and remembrance had taken hold in the north. When they reached home, they found Hrímvik changed, yet bearing scars that would forever tell of its journey. New Hall stood next to the stones carved with names of the lost. The sacred tree, now tall as the old mountain, bore fruit in all seasons and cast shadows soft as lullabies on children and elders alike. The clan gathered to welcome their return. Stories poured forth, the travels, the planting of sorrow's gifts, the villages reborn and others still grieving, the wisdom gained through the half-seen and the mercy tested beside frozen lakes. Skorn was greeted as kin, his muzzle kissed and garlanded with wildflowers, proof that even quiet love could transform a world. Their first night at home, the three companions led a circle beneath the sacred tree. Eydis sang the songs Kale had never learned, and her voice, once brittle, carried through the valley clear and strong, entwined with the voices of every child willing to join. Audun spoke of courage, not as conquest, but as the act of returning to help the wounded heal. Sigrun shared the lessons of hope, demonstrating that the smallest kindness strung across despair could mend generational wounds. Yet the return was not free of sorrow. Eydis visited her family's graves, planting silver seeds where she knew they would never rise again, recognizing that some loss would always remain unhealed. Sigrun knelt by the river, dropping a final vial into the current, watching its color spiral into the depths. Audun spent long hours in the fields, whispering apologies to winds and shadows whose forgiveness he could never quite grasp. That night, Vedra came one last time, her crown now tangled with 7 blossoms, her eyes proud and mournful. "You have shaped myth from pain," she told them. "You have taught forgiveness, love, and the truth that legacy grows never from perfection, but from the willingness to share sorrow as seed for future joy." As dawn warmed the valley, a new ritual blossomed. Every year, clans from across the wild north gathered beneath Hrímvik's tree, each carrying tokens of loss, stories of grief, and songs of hope. Stones formed circles around the elders, children planted new shoots with each tale, and the air thrummed with the blend of memory and laughter. Eydis became known as Songkeeper, teaching every child who came and reminding them that the music of the lost belonged to everyone willing to carry it. Sigrun was called Mother of Healers, and her wisdom was sought wherever pain and hope tangled. Audun, wise and gentle now, trained generations in mercy, his name spoken not with awe but with quiet gratitude. Skorn faded, as all faithful animals must, but his spirit lingered in every wild path and every act of patient love. The sacred tree grew ever taller, its branches woven with colored ribbons and stones from every tribe. Its fruit was carried far beyond Hrímvik, across mountains, seas, and generations, so that the myth lived wherever even one person chose to forgive, to mourn, to plant hope in the shadow of sorrow. And so, through centuries, the saga endured. Every loss became the root of a song, every end a beginning. The goddess Vedra became a memory etched in every dawn, and every year, children climbed the sacred tree to watch the world whisper in bright, forgiving wind. The story of Hrímvik, the story of Eydis, Sigrun, Audun, and Skorn, wove through the bones of the north, changing gods, villages, and dreams. In the deepest winter, when sorrow threatened to consume all, the valley sang back that love survives the ending, and every act of remembering forges new myth. Under the eternal sky, the people flourished, bearing sorrow and hope together, and the lessons of the pilgrimage echoed unbroken. The saga was finished, the story alive.